Good morning and welcome to episode 3 of LEX Talk. Today we're discussing the importance of drafting, pleading and conveyancing in the lives of lawyers and legal professionals. And to discuss this, whom better could we have? But we have professionals from the industry, professionals deeply connected with drafting, pleading and conveyancing. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our first guest on this show, Dr. Sabeena Gonsalves, a practicing advocate and a visiting faculty at several prominent law colleges in the city. Most students listening to this show would already know Sabeena ma'am, as you call her. And of course, our second guest, Mr. Prithvi Khithani, a final year law student at a law college in Mumbai, has interned with law firms and has also interned with us earlier at my law firm, and of course is very actively engaged with drafting and conveyancing, especially a person that's pretty experienced. He's also a stellar student of the college, I believe, and great to have both of you on the show. Dr. Sabeena Gonsalves, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a part of LEX Talk. Prithvi, thank you so much for joining us on LEX Talk episode 3.
Well,
thank you for inviting us.
Good morning, very good morning, Floyd and Prithvi and the audience. And thank you for having me over. It is such a pleasure. It's a delight for me to be on the session over here, the LEX Talk session. So yes, I'm really glad.
Thank you for both of you.
Everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. And this morning, we're going to take it with the whole topic of drafting, pleading, conveyancing. Dr. Sabeena, to you, what is drafting, pleading, conveyancing, in the legal sense of that term?
Okay, in the legal sense, if we have to go for that, see, basically, in common parlance, drafting is anything, the art of writing. Okay, just give me a minute.
In the meanwhile, I'll go over to you, Prithvi. Prithvi, what's your take and what's your experience on drafting?
Drafting, pleading and conveyancing is more of a practical subject than a theoretical subject. So I feel more of practical knowledge is required than the theory which you read in colleges. More of a practical knowledge is required for this subject, and until unless you practice this subject, you won't be able to ace it.
Well, you are right, Prithvi. It is more, you need a lot of practice for it. And in fact, the drafting, the drafting, pleading, conveyancing, this particular topic, it was included in all the law schools, but it was the 184th Law Commission report that made it mandatory to have this topic in every law school. And that's the reason it is a mandatory subject now. However, this is from the perspective of law students. As a visiting faculty in law colleges, this is what I could add to. But otherwise, it's primarily the draft, it's the skill. It's a very skillful art, which is, which is honed by prolonged practice. As you go on, you could just start with, it could be a basic application you could start off with. And over a period of time with practice, you get the skill and you know it, how beautifully you can write. And it's not about using archaic words or flowery language or something like that. It is just keeping the language simple, lucid, and very clear, but it should be understandable to the people who are, who read it. And it should portray what you are trying to tell them. It should, in the legal parlance, again, when you are looking at it from the legal perspective, it should include all the points, because again, whether it is your plaint, what you are drafting, which is going to be a part of your pleadings, or it could be any application whatsoever, what is to be submitted in court. The facts, the basic facts, the material facts have to all be very clear and concise. It has to be mentioned in a very lucid manner. So that is one of the
Dr.
most
Gonsalves, on that note, what Prithvi mentioned about, what is done at the academic level and, what is the actual need on the ground. What is your take on that? Because, as far as the academics are concerned versus what is actually required for day-to-day operations in a law firm or,
there are so many important, minute details what you need to pay attention to. First of all, your facts. You need to mention your facts in a very, very clear manner. It should not be ambiguous. There shouldn't be any scope for ambiguity. There are so many such points. Now, in the law schools, that exercise,
feel free to elaborate a few of those also. I mean, just mention a few of those points.
Well, okay, I'll just give you a very few examples. What we just tell them, okay, this is what you need to do. Like, okay, how do you write how do you draft a power of attorney, or how do you draft an affidavit or a notice? How it is to be drafted. So we teach them we just give them the core format, and we will give them maybe 1 or 2 examples, and we ask them, okay, now you do it on your own, you draft this. We give them an assignment, you need to do this, and they go ahead and they do the needful. By this, they do not get that much of practice. It is just 1 or 2 drafts what they are doing in each of these areas. However, once they go out, after getting their law degree, after completing the LLB course, once they go out into the open market, that's when they realize there are so many different circumstances, different situations, and the draft, you just cannot follow that prototype, that template. You need to
what are these skills that you really require to bridge this gap?
Of mind. Basically, application of mind. This is one of the things what is very important. I mean, you need to, and how will you learn? I mean, law students these days, I mean, what we have observed is that they want everything to be done in a hurry. And as a result, what they do, the easiest way is to look at your search engines. I mean, you just Google things and you get the ready-made draft, just copy paste. It's more of a copy paste phenomenon, which is really sad. Which, of course, because given the limited time period what we have for each semester, we need to complete the portions as well. I mean, the designated portion as well. So we do not normally, insist on, we don't give them that many assignments, and that is one reason what I think
we should take Prithvi's perspective on that, because Prithvi's perspective from the student point of view, I mean, how do you handle the paucity of time as well as of course the knowledge being imparted from the colleges, and then of course the whole industry requirement, because Prithvi, you have your hands in various other things of both the academic as well as the industry, interning with a firm as well as of course your own work on the side. So how do you really juggle between the the void that's between where you leave off in a college and what the industry requires of you?
See, skills such as language skills are absolutely necessary for the subject. Okay, so as Floyd saw in my previous internship with him, he used to tell me that if you want to learn such skills, you have to read on a daily basis, and you have to practice drafting documents on daily basis. Only then you will be able to ace in this topic. So, sir, I'll request you to suggest some books to someone who is looking to improve their language skills.
Okay, to that, I mean, there are various books that you can get. I don't want to name books on the show, but you can always mail it. I will inbox you authors' names, publication names. There are several good books in the market. I mean, the whole thing is, first of all, the need to read, because what happens is, unfortunately, most people, like Dr. Gonsalves rightly pointed out, most people are into that download culture, which I'm going to get into later on this talk. But, the whole thing of downloading documents, the question is, you need to, as she rightly mentioned, the application of mind a bit, and that stems from good reading. It's a very good thing that you brought up that contention. And going back to Dr. Gonsalves, what are the consequences of inadequate drafting skills? I mean, have you really come across somebody getting into a soup just because of bad draft? Or
it has a very negative effect on the client, and it's not just that, it is so much, it's loss of resources, loss of time, loss of money, and it could also lead to, at times, it could also be that your client could lose their legal right because of your inadequate drafting. So you need to be extremely careful as to, not only careful, you have to be very, very diligent. You need to do your proofreading thoroughly. Whatever draft you prepare, you need to check and recheck, read between the lines very carefully, and then, go ahead with it wherever you need to submit it, whether it is, be it, your court or the courtrooms or any other, government authorities. But the thing is, there has to be, it has to be read very, very meticulously. So that you need to really pay heed.
Talking of that, and on that subject, I remember there was a case which was sent to us where the client had got into an agreement for sale, not amounting to a sale, and the whole thing is the time frame was not really set in the agreement. So unfortunately, then they had to go into an entire process of revocation because there was no time frame that said if this deed was not completed within a defined time frame, this agreement stands lapsed. So because of that, it created a lot of, as you rightly pointed out, legal complexity, only because a line was missing in that agreement. Had that line been plugged in, it would have made things a lot simpler for the client.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, it's just not this. There are so many such, important, very, very crucial clauses and points, what are sometimes, due to whatsoever reason, it may be due to oversight or short sight, it is just, missed out. And that leads to such, such a negative impact.
True. And on that note, I mean, taking, drafting and conveyancing forward, I mean, what is the importance in your perspective on pleadings as well? Because court documents, pleadings, I mean, documents going to the court.
Pleadings
How
are the
important are they?
backbone. Pleadings are the foundation. It's the backbone of any litigation or a court matter. So you need to be really careful, because it is in the pleadings that the cause of action is, clearly and concisely mentioned. It speaks of the cause of action as well as the defense, from the defense side, what is his statement of defense. So you have to really be very careful when it comes to pleadings. And pleadings, again, it constitutes your plaint as well as the written statement. So this includes other documents as well. It also includes your complaint. So whatever is submitted in the court, and as I told you, this is the backbone of any litigation or court matter. Of course, pleadings can be amended later. I mean, it is a tedious process. You can do so, but the original, whatever document, your pleadings will be, the original form will be there. Apart from that, you can have additions by way of amendments, but then again, that does not put you in good light, because it's always better, as a very good advocate, you need to be very, very thorough with your work. So it speaks of your work. So that's what I
Very
could
true.
tell.
In fact, Dr. Gonsalves, you actually really spelled out the importance of, drafting, pleading, and conveyancing in the last two comments of yours, in terms of advocates and why they really need to be that thorough with drafting, pleading, and conveyancing. And, on that subject, to both of you all, what is the importance of, language, the need for specificity in language as far as, drafting, pleading, and conveyancing is concerned? Dr. Gonsalves, to you first, and then to Prithvi.
Thank you so much. Well, language is, again, this is my area, because I basically, I also teach legal language. And here again, when we say legalese, when we teach our students, we tell them, see that your documents shouldn't be, we are not asking you for your document to be completely in legalese. It has to be understandable to the common person. I mean, to any lay person. Your client is not a law student, or I mean, most of the time it so happens, your client will not have any knowledge of legalese. So in that sense, it should be understandable to your client as well. And that is why it is important. But then again, coming to language, it also includes your grammar, your spellings,